Hello and welcome to this month's edition of the Indiana State Police Public Information Program. I'm your host today, Sergeant Dave Burston, Public Information Officer with the Indianapolis Post. Today we're going to be talking about the Indiana State Police Air Section and the capabilities of the Air Section, and to help me do that, our guest is Sergeant Sam Maldonado. Sam, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dave.
It's good to have you here. Before we talk about what the Air Section does, let's learn a little bit about Sam. You've been with the department how long?
I've been with the department. I'm in my 20th year now since 1976.
God, I didn't know that. 20 years?
20 years.
You look too young.
Thank you.
I'm one of the few people that'll tell you that, aren't I?
I think so.
You have not been a pilot for that entire career, though, have you?
No, I have not.
How did you start out with the department? What were your initial duties?
I started out on patrolling highways in Marion and Hancock County for several years, and then I moved over to investigations. I worked in several areas of the investigation division, general crimes, some undercover work, some task forces. Did a couple of jobs at headquarters, and then moved over to the aviation unit in 1991.
Sounds like you've had a pretty well-rounded career altogether.
Yes, I've been in investigations, road patrol, some administration, and now the aviation section.
Before 1991, were you a pilot?
No, sir.
So this was, you decided, I think I want to fly planes? Or?
Well, I'd had some experiences with our aviation section and always had some interest in doing that. But in 1990, I took the plunge and began my own flight training, obtained my license, and in 91 was assigned to the aviation section in Area 5.
You brought up an interesting point that I think is worth expanding on. You, at your own expense, learned how to fly. It's not something the department taught you.
That's correct. All of our pilots, when they come onto the aviation section, for whatever means, either they paid for it themselves or got it in the military, have a pilot's license.
Now, is there any training that the department provides after you've gone to the point of getting your own license?
Yes. Before we will cut a pilot loose and give him one of our aircraft, there is a mandatory training that is done out of our headquarters at Indianapolis International Airport. It usually involves anywhere from 40 to 60 hours of day and night flying and all the different types of flying regiments that we do on a regular basis. There's a certified flight instructor who, and a training officer who does that training. Mm-hmm. And once you've completely and successfully passed all the phases, you are then released to fulfill the aviation section mission.
Now, speaking of the aviation section mission, what are the different missions of the Indiana State Police Air Section?
Well, specifically, we have three types of aircraft. We have two twin aircrafts, which are used for the long-range transportation of prisoners and detectives and evidence and other government officials that fall within the protective status and other types of missions that the Indiana State Police form. We also have our rotor wing unit, which are basically helicopters.
That's now the official term is rotor wing.
Rotor wing.
Lay person would say helicopter.
Helicopters. Okay. And we have 5 helicopters spread throughout the state, northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast, and central Indiana. And they perform a variety of missions, some of which they are unique to the capabilities of a helicopter. Additionally, we have 4 single-engine fixed-wing airplanes, which is what I fly. Mm-hmm. And those missions are performed by the 4 pilots that have those aircraft. But generally speaking, the aviation section performs transportation, marijuana eradication, surveillance, aerial photography, search and rescue capabilities. We just had a helicopter perform a rescue in a flooded riverbed
in southern Indiana,
out of the Sellersburg Post. We also do quite a bit of surveillance, like I said, surveillance, aerial photography, and we do traffic patrols.
And speaking of traffic patrol, I had the privilege of flying with you, and the funny thing, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. The other day, you helped me out on the radio, and you were telling me that you had a hard time operating the radio, and it really scared me when you said that, because I thought, my God, this man's flying a plane and he doesn't know how to work the state police radio. But then I had already flown with you, and I saw what a very safe and competent pilot you were, so I wasn't too worried about it after that. Speaking of, as far as what the air section does for traffic patrol, we did have a chance to go out and do what sometimes people think of as the bear in the air. And I found out that there's a lot more involved to it than just jumping in the plane and taking off. As a matter of fact, you walked us through the entire process of checking the weather, checking out the aircraft, and then actually getting airborne. As a matter of fact, we had the camera with us that day, and we're just going to switch over to that footage right now and watch as Sam gets us ready to go flying. So please stay tuned. I think you're going to enjoy it.
We're now inside the weather flight briefing room at Angel Air FBO, located at Mount Comfort Airport. One of the first things that we always do before we take a flight is that we check the weather. And here at Mount Comfort we have a DUATS and a weather radar screen. So what we'll do is call up Indiana weather. That'll take about 40 to 50 seconds to recycle, and then we'll come over to the weather radar and just kind of run through that and get that set up. Indiana is located in what they call the Corn Belt radar satellite map, so we'll punch that in, and as you can see right now there's not any precipitation at all. Here entering the Illinois area, we've got a couple of light rain showers. But we'll go ahead and just start the motion, and it'll show us what the weather pattern as far as precipitation had been here since about 7 o'clock this morning. And it kind of goes through that. You see it was a little cell up here by Cleveland, and it'll run through it a couple of times. No precipitation in Indiana at all. So nothing that'll affect our flight. One of the other things we can do here is also check the current conditions. We always check our area, and as you can see here in Indiana, the winds are out of the east. In central Indiana, anywhere from 14 to 12 knots. Up here north by the Gary area, they're at 9 knots, and Fort Wayne are at 14 knots, mostly out of the east. So we'll just come back here. Also just double check at our sky conditions, and you can see it's mostly sunny. So that now we have an idea of what the winds are and what the precipitation is. And we know that as a result of checking this, we're going to have a good conditions for this flight. Then we'll come over to the DUATS computer, and we'll just check our weather here. We'll go down to the briefing menu, National Weather Briefing, and then go straight over to Surface Weather Observations. And here in Indianapolis International Airport is reporting clear skies below 12,000. The winds are out of the east at 12 knots, and the altimeter is 3052. So we're in real good shape. We'll check the general area also just to make sure we don't have any weather coming in from anywhere else. Up in the Muncie area, they're reporting 13,000 scattered, visibility 8 miles. The winds are out of the east at 8 knots, and they also have an altimeter reading as 3053. Out west in Terre Haute, they're reporting 18,000 thin broken. The winds out of the east at 15 knots. So we got a pretty clear weather pattern. Winds out of the east, clear skies, light winds, mostly out of the east. We'll go down here and get the forecast, since we're going to be up for a couple of hours, just to make sure that we don't have a quickly changing weather pattern. And as we can see through most of the day, we're going to have from 25,000 to 10,000 scattered, winds out of the east at 10 knots to 8 knots. So again, we know that we're going to be pretty safe. We're going to be flying at about 2,500 feet. So that's closer to 3,000 feet than it is to anything else. So we'll check here in Indianapolis. The winds at 3,000 feet are 120 at 16 knots. Again, kind of out of the southeast at 16. So still within our parameters, pretty safe flight. We're going to be in shape. We're going to check any quick NOTAMs for Mount Comfort, the airport that we're flying in and out of. They don't list any. At Indianapolis International, runway 14 and 32 is closed. Check to see if there's anything else that might affect us. I can go through this pretty quickly because I'm used to doing it now. When I first started, couldn't go that quickly. And we're in pretty good shape here. So we're back to the menu. Now that we've checked our DUATS weather and our radar satellite, we know that from the weather standpoint, we're going to have a safe flight. Conditions are good in order to do the mission that we have planned today. So we'll go on out to the airplane now and start our pre-flight. Our next step in order to prepare for flight today is to pre-flight the airplane to make sure everything's working correctly and that we're going to have a safe flight. So generally what we do is we'll come inside the airplane, release the control lock, which we always put on the airplane. Then we will drop the flaps 30 degrees. Watch it, there you go. And that'll expose part of the flap control so we can check on those. Now what we'll do is we'll be very systematic on how we do this. We'll start at the rear of the plane here, check the cables and controls to make sure that everything's okay. We'll also check the leading edges all around the plane to make sure that since the last time I flew the plane, there's no damage. We check all the antennas, kind of look underneath the airplane to make sure that we're all set here. Also, while we're here, what we do is get our fuel tester out, and we'll just kind of basically take a look at the airplane, make sure everything's working. We've got certain safety features that we check every time. Make sure that our washers and nuts are tight and well connected so that we don't have any loss of control in flight. Check all the leading edges once again of the airplane. Come across, make sure there are no loose screws. Okay. This is a pitot tube, helps us check our airspeed, and we always take that off at this time. We check inside to make sure there's no entrance to it. There's what we call here is our static source vent. We always check and make sure that's not clogged. And then we come up and check our fuel, look on top of the wings to make sure that there's no leaks and nothing's cracked, and to ensure that we in fact do have fuel. We've checked that we have fuel. Now we come underneath the wing here and we just check and make sure that the fuel looks good, that it smells right, and that there are no impurities in the fuel. It should have a slight blue tint to it, which it does. And once we do that, we kind of dispose of the sample. Come around to the front of the plane. We check underneath to make sure that the front strut is okay. Now walk through the whole plane, check the propeller. Now we just kind of take a quick look inside just to make sure that everything looks good. Make sure that there's nothing missing, nothing broken. On a cold day like today, we would normally turn the propeller just a couple of times just to get the oil inside, mixing with the engine parts so that there are no, we get as little friction as possible. We do an additional check of the engine compartment, do a fuel check here once again. A little brisk out here today. And then we check our oil, much like you're doing in a car. Make sure that we have enough oil. Close that up. Take a look underneath on this side again. Once again, now we're going to check this side of the plane. Kind of repeat the same process. We have two separate fuel tanks. They're located in the wings, so we want to make sure that we have plenty of fuel. Without fuel, we're not going to go very far. And once again, we check the front of the airplane, the wings. Take a look. Just to ensure that we're going to have a safe flight. Once again, we're not going to do anybody any good in any of our mission if we're not safety can allow ourselves to become either reckless or complacent. We check the second fuel tank. Once again, we check for smell and color, make sure there are no imperfections, any water or sediment in the fuel. Kind of dump it out, do the same thing. And then we finish off on this side of the plane by looking underneath, just checking the antennas, checking the leading edges. Make sure all the control cables, nuts and bolts, washers, they were all set and ready to go. We've pre-fried the plane now, and we're as safe as we can be, and we're ready to go.
Now, Sam, as we were in the aircraft, obviously it's very noisy with the engine noise, and that's the kind of noise I want to hear. I want to hear that engine constantly running. So can you kind of walk through what things that we're seeing now that we're in the aircraft and how you are clocking vehicles?
When we fly these traffic patrols, we take certain precautions ahead of time. For instance, this traffic patrol we're flying today, we generally fly at about 1,500 feet above the ground. That gives us plenty of clearance from any towers, buildings, and wires that might be strung along the highway and throughout Indiana. In this location, 1,500 feet gives us a margin of safety if anything should go wrong, and it also allows us to have plenty of clearance from those towers and buildings and such.
Because as I recall, you actually had to get clearance from the Air Traffic Control Center in Indianapolis, let them know where we were, what we're doing, and...
Yes, at this location, in this particular traffic patrol, it's on I-70 at the 89-mile marker, which is on the far east side of Indianapolis, between Shadeland Avenue and 465 on the east side. As you look down from the windows of the plane, you can see that along the berm of the highway, there are yellow vertical lines that were painted by myself. Those lines are 660 feet apart. And by using the standard distance and time formula, we can determine the speed. So as I'm flying an oval circle around this location, I can observe cars as they're traveling through this location, and by just a little bit of experience, try and take a guess as to which cars are traveling faster than others. I then use it's an electronic speed timing device. Some people might consider it to be just a basic stopwatch, but it's really much more because this particular instrument, a chronometer, can not only keep track of the time, but it has a capability to put the distance in, so that as we begin the clock of a car that goes through the first set of lines, we just wait until as the car is traveling, it gets to the second set of lines and we shut it off, and it gives you the speed. In this case, as an example here, it's 74.75 miles per hour. It also keeps track that that was the first clock of the day. So as I continue to clock cars and continue in this detail, it also keeps track that my second clock was 84.2, and we just can continue to clock cars. The great advantage to this is that we can, if we have a location that has a problem with speed, there's been a lot of traffic accidents or just a lot of complaints that there's a cause of traveling too fast, we can put these lines down. If you see them along the highway, you know that's what they're for.
Yes.
We put them there. There's no secret to it. We're not trying to hide anything from anyone. And we can clock a greater number of vehicles. And as you see, we have anywhere from 3 to 5 cars on these traffic patrols. And we can stop a lot of cars in a short amount of time, use our time as effectively as possible to attempt to control a problem of speeding.
In communicating to the cars on the road, you actually have a state police radio in the aircraft.
That's correct. We keep radio contact, and as the cars go through and I call off a speed, I identify the car, I continue to monitor that car and watch it, describing its location and description of the car as best I can, until I actually observe the state police unit pull the proper car over. When he does, I identify the car again, I acknowledge he has the right car, I give them the time of the day and the speed that it was traveling, and then I go back to my oval.
So in essence, you just don't call off a car and say it's a blue Chevy. You're verifying 2, 3, or 4 times that the unit has seen the car that you were clocking, that you actually are able in the position you are to physically see them pull the car over, and you can verify, yes, you've got the right car.
That's correct.
And that probably eliminates a whole lot of problems as far as contesting these kind of cases in court.
It really does. Anymore, with the cost of traffic tickets going up the way they are, pilots in the aviation section do everything they can humanly do not to make any mistakes. So not only do we call the car off and describe it, we observe the car until it's pulled over by one of the state police cars so that we can ensure ourselves that we do have, in fact, the right car.
And you also make a physical documentation of all this information too, is that correct?
Yes, we keep a log of the location that we're doing the traffic patrol, the state police cars on the ground, and then we just make a long list of the information that has the time, the speed, the specific car that pulled the citizen over.
Sam, I'd like to thank you very much for taking time from your schedule to come out and visit with us today and explain all that's involved with the Indiana State Police Air Section, particularly relating to air patrol. I think it's very important for the public to know the links that we go through to make sure that the flight is safe and that also we are stopping the appropriate person. So thanks for participating.
You're welcome.
When we come back from our break, we'll find ourselves at the Indiana State Police Air Section at the Indianapolis International Airport. You'll have a chance to see the other aircraft that the state police uses, meet some of the people there, and what's involved in keeping the Indiana State Police Air Section in the air. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Every day I see needless suffering and injury from traffic crashes caused by driving too fast. Don't fool yourself. Speed shatters life.
Hello and welcome back to the program. Here we are at the Indiana State Police Aviation Section. We're going to go inside and meet Lieutenant Craig Ralston, who is the section commander, and he's going to give us a tour of the facilities. So let's go on inside. Hello and welcome back to the program. We're inside the air section now. I want you to meet the commander of the air section, Lieutenant Craig Ralston, and he's going to give us an overview of the Indiana State Police Air Section and what its mission is. Craig, give us in a nice nutshell. We've got plenty of time. Tell us about the mission of the State Police.
We're pretty proud of what the State Police Aviation Section does. Aside from a couple of small other airborne units that police agencies have, Lake County has a unit, IPD has a unit, we're the primary supporter of air support for law enforcement agencies throughout the state. If somebody needs an aircraft, we're the guys that do it.
And that's going to be regardless of prisoner transportation, natural disaster, or marijuana eradication.
Absolutely. We do drug surveillances, we do photo details, crime scenes. We're called by law enforcement agencies all over the state to do those kind of missions. As well as traffic enforcement, we support our troopers as well as some other agencies. We're there. We are the guys that are there to support police agencies throughout the state.
Can you tell us what some of the aircraft are that we're looking at, and tell us the mission of each of them?
Sure. The Baron, this is a Beechcraft Baron. It's a 1972 airplane, and this is a Piper Cheyenne that's right here. These are our two twin-engine airplanes. We use them for transportation of, we use them for transportation of investigators. We do prisoner returns in them. We haul VIPs, state elected officials. We provide transportation for them. And we have hauled organs, on emergency transportation of organs.
For
pretty much any kind of a transportation.
Blood transportation, livers, hearts, things like that.
Absolutely. We've hauled serums and medicines for doctors and hospitals around the state from time to time. We provide a lot of different types of public service. If you think of all the varied missions that a trooper does on the road, then we do those same kind of things with an aircraft.
How many aircraft total are in the air section?
We have right now 13 aircraft. We have 7 helicopters. We have 4 single-engine Cessnas, and then we have the 2 twin-engine airplanes. This aircraft is a 1979, so as you can see, it's pretty old too.
Looks in excellent condition, though.
Yes, it is. We work very hard at maintaining them. It's important that they look good for the department, to maintain the image of the department, and it's important for safe operating to make sure that we maintain them because we fly them and we put some pretty important people on them. We put our troopers on them.
What are some of the missions that a helicopter would be used for?
Well, the helicopter, we can't do without the helicopter, and you become more aware of that when you do searches. We get called a lot to do manhunt searches, rescues. A couple of years ago, we flew a number of hours in a very cold December month looking for 5 lost Boy Scouts in Brown County. And we just couldn't have done that without the helicopters. We did it all night long using the searchlight. Now we have a thermal imager that also helps us find people on the ground. And the thermal imager obviously is mounted on one of the helicopters.
Now, for our lay people that may be watching the program, tell us what a thermal imager is.
The thermal imager detects heat. It is not dependent upon any light at all. So in total darkness, it detects heat. Everything has a heat signature, every building, wire, person. And so basically it turns nighttime into day. And to try to find a person after dark, even in the daytime, but particularly after dark with the imager, if they're there, is fairly easy. We can go out, look at a cornfield or a woods, and tell the police officers that are there either trying to find someone who's lost or a fugitive in a matter of minutes if they're in there, with a lot of certainty.
Lieutenant Ralston, I'd want to thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedule, giving us this real quick nutshell tour of the facilities out here. Thank you very much. We certainly hope you enjoyed this edition of the Indiana State Police Public Information Program, and now appreciation of the services rendered by the Indiana State Police Aviation Section, be it traffic patrol or criminal patrol. And just like in the air, we're always buckled up when we're inside any type of an aircraft. We want you to be buckled up in your car. So please remember, buckle up. The life you save may be your own or that of somebody you love. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.